Alright, we're live. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started with this testing. Let's actually turn down the music a little bit here. There we go. Hello. How is it going tonight? Okay. I think my connection might have lagged out there for a second, so it's probably going to kick me to the login screen first. And then... Oh, there we go. Connection has been a little bit weird tonight. It's been a lot of weird stuff with my connection. It kind of doesn't let me... What is it called? It won't let me log into my game unless I'm like on a VPN, so that adds like a little bit of latency, which is weird. I need to email support about that because I've tried on multiple different characters and it worked. Doesn't matter if I'm trying to log into PTS or if I'm trying to log into live. If I'm not on a VPN, it won't let me log in. Kind of mourning for you. So you would be... hopefully server stability is going to be okay so I can actually get accurate tests. Because tonight I wanted to try out the new Psijic Skill lines and hopefully get some sort of comparison between Magicka and nightblades. At least that's just because those are the only two tunes I have templates for. And I will try it out on Magplar and all the other Magicka classes too, but I should get a good idea of where it stands just from running it on a Sorc and running it on a Magblade. Let's try this again, and hopefully my connection won't lag out this time. So this test right here is your standard Sorc setup for live right now. So it's basically 3 willpower, 5 acuity, 2 alambris, and a perfected Asylum's Inferno front bar. The only difference here between live and this is I have Bloodthirsty instead of Arcane, because Bloodthirsty so far right now is the best trait. We're not 100% sure if it will remain the best trait, but at least it seems like Bloodthirsty is performing very well, both in raids and on parses as well. I will kind of look into the math between Arcane and Infused spell damage. I believe there was already some math done, but I think there was a little bit of fault behind it because they forgot to add in the CP addition to your Max Magicka, so that one's not quite as accurate, but I will try to go over the math hopefully during this week. So one thing I will make note of here is I am not the best Sorc in the game. Admittedly, I am probably one of... I actually haven't played my Sorc on live for a very long time, actually. Like, competitively. So if my DPS is a little bit low, I'm going to attribute it to I'm a crap Sorc. Which is probably true. I know a lot. I know plenty of other sorks that are much better than I am. Sustain is still just as bad as I remember it on a sork. Not very surprising there. I'm going into execute with really low magic. I don't like it. Yeah, I am not a fan. I'm not a fan of Sork Sustain, because Sork Sustain is really, really bad. And this is with a regen glyph and gold food. So, I don't know, maybe I'm just bad with Sork, but I just feel like Sork Sustain is just absolute crap compared to nightblades. So that was 36k. And so now what I want to try out is the new Psijic Skill. So there's a new Psijic Skill line. So all the templates now have the Psijic order completely maxed out in terms of level. Unfortunately, they still make you. They haven't like given you max level on any of the skills yet. So you can see here, I just got this. I just wanted to get it the morph. So this is Imbue Weapon. This is the new potential spammable for pretty much all Magicka DPS except maybe Nightblades. So the initial morph is stamina based, and it'll basically make the next light attack you use deal additional physical damage. And then when you morph it, you get the choice between basically adding an additional heal to it, or you can make it into a Magicka morph instead. And when you do the Magicka morph, it changes into magic damage and applies either burning, concussed, or chilled. So it's basically going to be a guaranteed application of one of those three status effects whenever you do a light attack within 2 seconds of using this ability. So the idea behind it is you're using elemental weapon now as your spammable, and that basically empowers your light attack. And if you compare the tooltip, so right now at level 1 it deals 8130 magic damage. And if you compare that to the typical Sork spammable, which is Force Pulse, if you add up all those together, it's basically 2700, 2700, 2800. It ends up being about 8300. So the amount of damage that you're dealing is more or less about the same here. The difference really comes into cost. So Force Pulse costs about 2200 Magicka or so, versus Elemental Weapon, which costs about 1800 Magicka. So you basically have a 400 Magicka less in terms of cost. You're not doing as much damage, but again, I'm on level 1. It seems like when you level it up, it increases the damage by about 1% each time. So when you have Elemental Weapon all the way up to level 4, the damage should be a little bit more comparable to Force Pulse. So with that in mind, I'm thinking potentially you might be doing a 5-5-2 setup instead of the typical Asylum with 3 willpower, 5 acuity, and 2 Lambris. However, that still remains to be seen, so I'm just gonna try this out right now. Then the other skill I'm also going to want to try out is going to be Channeled Acceleration. So the original skill is just Accelerate, and that basically gives you Major Expedition for 3 seconds and Minor Force for 12 seconds, and it costs Magicka. So this is basically a Magicka minor force, so you don't have to use rearming trap anymore. You can pretty much use this at range. And so you have two morphs here: Race Against Time, which reduces the cost of sprint by 50% for 3 seconds. And then you have Channel Acceleration, which basically gives it a cast time, but triples the duration of both the Major Expedition and Minor Force. So now you have 9 seconds of Major Expedition, 36 seconds of Minor Force, which is pretty strong. And then when you increase the level, it doesn't seem to affect anything right now. Like cost doesn't seem to change at all. The duration doesn't seem to change at all. So I don't know if that's like a bug with Harvins, or if like this is actually it and you don't have to actually level acceleration past the morph. So we'll see. What we're going to do now is just we're going to take out Force Pulse, put in an elemental weapon, and then basically change up our setup here. So now we're going to be doing a 5-5-2 setup. So we're going to be doing 5 acuity here. Let me just 5 acuity, and then we're going to have Julianus on our body here. And then the idea is whether this is going to beat out the original parse. So the original parse we had again was 36k. So that's kind of the metric to beat. That's probably like a little on the low end, because I do know sorks that are able to pull like 39k with a spammable build. So you know, again, I'm not a really good mag sork by any means. So we'll see whether or not elemental weapon will make a difference or not with our DPS. So you basically weave it just the exact same way as Force Pulse. The animation takes a little bit of getting used to here. So that's what the animation looks like. The added advantage of using elemental weapon as a spammable is that there's a passive under the Psijic Skill line called Spell Orb, and so whenever you use a Psijic Order ability, you gain basically like a charge. Once you get 5 charges, you launch an orb which deals magic damage, or physical, whichever one ends up being higher. So basically you get an additional source of damage when you're using elemental weapon as a spammable. And so I managed to play around with it a little bit on Monday, and it weaves pretty well compared to when last week on the PTS. So you can see here, it weaves pretty well compared to Force Pulse, and it is definitely cheaper. And you can see those little orbs forming around me. That's the Power Orb passive. So 3, 4, and then you launch it out. And so that's basically kind of the idea. So instead of using Force Pulse, we'll be using Elemental Weapon instead. And so we'll go just do a 6 million dummy test, and then figure out whether this is going to beat out the perfect Asylum Staff on the front bar. And then I'll try it again with a imperfect Asylum Staff to get a more realistic parse comparison between, you know, what a typical mag sork would play, just because the perfect Inferno Staff is kind of hard to get for your average raider. So one of the two things we're looking at besides damage is also sustain. How well does it feel when I'm weaving it, like in terms of sustain? Oh, right, you're right. Oh, I forgot. Thank you for reminding me about that. I completely forgot about that. I do need to put a Destro skill on my front bar. So we'll just do Ellie range on the front bar here. Completely forgot about that. Thank you. Thank you for reminding me about that. Yeah, so we'll do that, and then Storm Atro on the back bar here like this. Yeah, so the downside of running Ellie weapon on the front bar is you will have to use a Destro ult on your front bar, just so you have that Ancient Knowledge passive keep on working for you. Thanks, Yuri, for pointing that out. I completely forgot about that when I made that change. And so that's just so you have the Ancient Knowledge passive, because you do need a Destro staff ability slotted. I would like for them to change it so you just have to have Destro staffs equipped, so it's consistent with like the other passives, but haven't seen that yet. Oh, that was the wrong button. Another downside of running Ellie weapon is you actually need to be really good with your weaving in order to make the best use out of it, because it only empowers your light attack. It doesn't empower, it's not a damage skill itself. So if you're garbage at weaving, then this skill isn't going to be quite as strong. So right now, just looking at the damage meter, it doesn't seem to be beating out Force Pulse with an Asylum Staff. However, sustain-wise, it feels a lot better compared to Force Pulse. Like, I feel like even though I'm just doing my normal rotation, so I'm doing a heavy attack every second time on my back bar. But it doesn't feel like I'm having quite as bad sustain issues using Elemental Weapon instead. Even though I think I'm losing about, if I'm remembering correctly, I'm losing about like 3k DPS, which is definitely significant. Like, that's definitely a DPS loss. Oh, I'm an execute. Shoot. Okay, so that time I got 36.3. So you can see here, for some reason, Combat Metrics is considering Elemental Weapon to be its own thing, even though it doesn't actually do any damage. It's actually just boosting your light attack damage. But it's doing pretty well. This is, again, the light attack damage is still kind of silly right now on the PTS. They haven't made any combat changes, balance changes yet, so light attacks are still doing a stupid high amount of DPS. But I'm just going to look at my weave ratio here. 33 divided by 166. So I got a weave ratio of about 0.8, which is not terrible, but it definitely could be better. Weaving it wrong, you need to push skill before light attack, because sometimes you just lose buff. So I'm not sure what you mean by that. So basically what it is it doesn't matter if you do a light attack first or you do the ability first. If you do a light attack first, then yeah, you miss out on one proc, but like you're getting the proc right there when you're weaving like this. So you can see that if you're, I don't know if you guys can hear it or see it, but there's kind of like an explosion happening on the dummy. And that's Elemental Weapon doing its random status effect. I believe LZH did a bunch of testing on it just to see the distribution of the debuffs. Let's take a look at debuffs here. So what he found was that minor maim seemed to be proccing way more often than minor vulnerability. You can kind of see this here. If they were proccing at about the same rate, you would expect them to be about 33% for all of them, but minor maim is hitting at 52%. And remember, our only source of minor maim amount of vulnerability right now is elemental weapon. We do have extra sources of burning from our flame enchant, so you know it's kind of, well, what does that mean? So LZH did it on a nightblade, so just spamming elemental weapon with no enchant at all, just spamming elemental weapon, and found that minor main was proccing more often. So not sure if that's intended or if that's a bug, because if it truly is random, then it should be 33, 33, 33. No, yeah. So like I said, like that first buff, that doesn't really matter too much. At least I don't think it matters all that much. So I mean, you can start off with it. You just have to remember, like, if you're going to go into a fight, like if you're going to go into a fight, you basically start with that, right? You'd start with this, light attack into your Destra ult like that way, and then swap to your back bar, do your back bar rotation. So you're never always going to get the buff on your light attack, because you're obviously going to do back bar rotation. But if I was going into a fight, I'd probably start off like that. So elemental weapon, light attack, not dodge roll. So you do elemental weapon, light attack into your, come on, let me light attack. Okay, it's being a little bit weird. Alright. I think some of my button hits aren't registering for some reason. There we go. Now it's working for some reason. Yeah. But yeah, if you want to get that first buff, then you would just do light attack, like something like that, and then you start off with the Destra ult. So I'll show you what I mean by that. But I get what you're saying. But getting that one extra attack being buffed, that doesn't really matter too much in the long run. Especially in a long parse. So if you were to start on your front bar, for instance, you basically do something like this. And then swap to your back bar and do your back bar rotation. So I'm going to try a different rotation just because the sustain feels a lot nicer. I'm going to try heavy attacking every third blockade instead of every other and see if that changes anything. That's blockade 2. This is blockade 3. Okay, so it doesn't seem like I'll be able to do every third blockade. It seems like it's still looks like it's going to be a little bit too expensive to manage that. So that's a bit of a shame. So it does look like you will probably have to have your attack about as often as you would with your current rotation, it seems. It's kind of a shame. I was hoping that you'd be able to heavy attack a little bit less often. Alright, so it seems like they're about the same here. But let's take a look at that, this parse here. So we had minor vulnerability uptime 54%. But the weaving here wasn't quite as good. Versus here, where we had 35% minor vulnerability uptime. So, I'm not sure what to make of that. Because the big thing with the Asylum Staff is that it really helps boost your minor vulnerability uptime. So you can see 54 compared to 32. So, you know, that's 20% an increase in minor vulnerability uptime for the group. So if your healers aren't running IA, then having that Asylum Staff in group is pretty useful here. And just judging from these results here, I don't think there's a point in testing the imperfect Asylum Staff, because, you know, just from these tests it seems like Elemental Weapon is pulling blow to blow with the Asylum Staff. But again, I'm not like a good Magsorc by any means. I'm not the best Magsorc. So, you know, I'm not sure what to make of this. I think I'm gonna wait for a better Magsorc to come along and actually do these parses, just so it's a little bit more consistent. Just because, again, I'm not a really good Magsorc. Yeah, so the elemental weapon itself is considered magic damage. If you can see here, it's highlighted as magic damage compared to Haunting Curse and Crystal Frags. You know, so it's not buffed by any racial passives. Spell Orb is also magic damage, and it's actually pretty low down here. It helps out a little bit. We got 11 hits in throughout the 6 million W parse, so it's not terrible. It does about the same DPS as like a Monster Helm, like maybe a little bit less. So that's something to take into consideration too when we look at this parse. And we do have an additional damage source from Spell Orb. So if you take away that 400 DPS, you know, we're sitting a little bit lower. We're sitting at about, you know, 35.9. But again, we have lower minor vulnerability uptime compared to the Asylum Staff parse. So, you know, that's something to take into consideration. So if I were to test this again with help, I'd probably ask for a healer to use my IA, so I have 100% minor vulnerability uptime. That way we can basically eliminate minor vulnerability variability as, you know, as a variable. But it does seem like 552 with LE weapon is going to be pretty decent for Magsorcs. I just like the fact that it's much better sustain. The sustain felt a lot better, and if we take a look, so here it's about, I mean, it felt a little bit better up until execute. When we get to execute, it felt about the same. So 1386 to 1568, 1414 to 1589, so that's about 170. And then our parse here is actually about 50 difference, so it's 1420 to 1645, so that's about 220. So we are seeing about a 50 additional regen per disparity there in favor of regen. Might not seem like a lot, but I mean, it felt a lot better. But that just could be in my head. Again, it also could be I'm a bad Magsorc. So now we're going to go ahead and swap over to nightblade. And then maybe if I have time, I will do maybe Magicka Warden or either Magicka Warden or maybe like Magicka Templar. I think Magicka are still going to be using Molten Whip, but we'll have to see. I don't have templates up for those, so I would actually have to grind out the Psijic order line on whatever additional tune I make. So the good thing about running these tests on a nightblade is I don't have to change any of my setups. It's always going to be 2 pieces on, 5 Architect, and 5 Acuity here, so won't have to worry about that at all. So we'll try out different spammables here. So we'll go with the typical funnel. They did make funnel health a lot faster to weave. Let me just put funnel on. So the animation is actually a lot faster now, so weaving funnel is pretty similar to weaving force pulse now on a nightblade. Now while this might seem like a buff, you also have to remember they also increased the cost of funnel health, so it was more in line with what force pulse was costing. So your sustain's going to take a hit just because you're able to cast funnel health a lot more often in the same time span. So that does change when you want to time your light attack now. I'm running out of Magicka. Let me just get some Magicka back. So now it's hard to demonstrate like the old funnel because they actually changed the animation itself. So now the animation is pretty much like when your hand is drawn all the way back is when you can do your next light attack. So you can see once my hand is kind of all the way back, that's when you can do your next light attack, and that's a lot faster compared to the old funnel. I think they just sped up the animation by a certain amount, so you know that's probably just what they did. Just probably just sped up the animation to be more in line with the force pulse. Okay, so again, in terms of gear, 2 Zon, 5 Architect, 5 Acuity, and Bloodthirsty still on all of our pieces. And we will be doing right up, so we're a melee Magblade because we're using Rearming Trap. That also helps out our sustain by a good decent amount because now we don't have to cast as many abilities because now we're basically have to use Soul Harvest and Rearming Trap here. Let's go ahead and get started here. Oh no, the lag came back. Alright, so we had a lag spike there. I'm gonna stop it because I just want everything to be as accurate as possible. Yes, I do want to test out Mag Wardens. I don't know if they're going to be, like, competitive in Summerset. Basically, all the Magicka DPS classes got a buff with the changes to how they scaled light attacks, but there weren't any direct buffs to Magicka Warden skills. So, for, like, Burge wasn't buffed, Fetcher Infection wasn't buffed, like, basically none of our class abilities were buffed. So, our only buffs pretty much came from generic buffs. So Magicka Wardens are pretty much like going to be at the same state they were relative to other Magicka DPS, I think, in that they're capable of pulling good DPS, but you're still going to be very reliant on having the Bear ultimate in order to pull that DPS. You're going to be pretty much going to be like third rate in terms of Magicka DPS. So the only advantage you would bring to the table as a Magicka Warden would be using Master Architect as a range DPS and giving Major Slayer to all your range DPS. So that's kind of where Magicka Wardens stand, and I don't think that's going to change in Summerset unless they end up buffing Magicka Wardens next week. I would really, really love them to do so, because I love playing the Magicka Warden, but I also understand why they would be hesitant to do it, because you do have to buy the Warden, and they kind of probably want to avoid the whole pay-to-win scenario. I didn't mean to buff that. execute. Ooh, that was hot. Alright, so that is with funnel health. So sustain, I mean you can see it here, it's about the same. A little bit less than mag source with Ellie weapon, but I didn't really have any sustain issues at all. The changes to funnel health, as long as you're playing melee, I should say, you shouldn't have any sustain issues. When you play at range, it's a different story. Will Magicka take your spot? I would actually be more worried about nightblades taking your spot, because 46-3 on a 6mm dummy. melee Magicka nightblade. As far as I know, the highest Magicka nightblade parse that I've seen was from LZH, based god himself, who pulled 48k on a 6mm. And I think the highest Stam nightblade parse that I've seen on a 6mm was around 49k, maybe 50. I'd have to go back and check on my Discord. But melee Magicka nightblades are actually probably going to be more worrisome than Magicka DKs. You're still going to want to have a Magicka DK, especially now that they're able to pull very competitive DPS with other melee DPS specs for the engulfing flame debuff. So that way that increases your mainly Magicka nightblade attacks, especially Zan. So I would not say that Mag DKs will take your spot. They're probably still going to want Stam nightblades. I'm not sure where the other Stam classes are going to land though, because with the changes to Sunderflame, Stamplars are kind of, you can either go with Stamplar or you can have somebody running Sunderflame instead. So Stamplars are kind of not necessarily obsolete now, but they've kind of been made more irrelevant, as they've already been like second lowest DPS in terms of Stam. But yeah, so if they don't change the light attack damage, which they will, they definitely will, and even if they do, I can still see some, like a Mag Decay and a Mag Nightblade being in melee range, taking up 2 of the 6 melee spots in like score runs potentially. Sorry, so that was funnel health. So now let's go ahead and try elemental weapon here. So now we have elemental weapon. So remember that elemental weapon is cheaper than funnel health, force pulse. It doesn't do as much damage. So if we take a look at the tooltips, it's 8209 versus funnel health's 8484. Again, elemental weapon right now is only at level 1. But once we get up to level 4, it'll probably be a lot closer in damage. And we're also getting that additional spell orb passive there, so we're getting that additional spell orb there. But we are losing out on a couple of things here. So we are losing out on an additional heal from not using funnel, and we're also losing out on a little bit of additional ulti regen. So if we take a look at the siphon passives, we're also missing out on additional max magicka too. So we lost 8% max magicka because we don't have a siphoning attack now on our front bar at all. Now what we could do, if we want to keep that, is we can move path to the back bar and move crippling grasp to the front bar here, and that would basically create a whole new rotation, a whole new setup here, which might not be the worst thing in the world. I might try that after this part just to see if we can make it work. But that would change up your rotation a fair amount here. You would also be losing the health from the front bar because you no longer have Dark Vigor on the front bar now. So that's something to keep in mind there. So you have trade-offs no matter what skill you put here. If you put Twisting Path here, you get that extra health. If you put Crippling Grasp there, you lose the health, you gain the magicka. So there's a lot of different things you could do here. So we'll just stick with the standard path on front bar here with Elemental Weapon. Again, we will still be being in melee range. And the parse to beat is not that one, 46-3. So we'll see how that plays out here. Now, my initial thoughts are that Imbue Weapon won't be quite as strong as Funnel Health. Since it buffs your light attacks, and we're bar swapping so often compared to like a mag sword. This parse is pretty bad too. Like I'm hitting my bow proc way too early. So sometimes I'm re-upping the buff instead of actually like yeah, this is just a really bad parse. See, like, that's like the 4th time I've done it in this parse, and that will drop my parse by a fair amount. And I'm also getting, like, some weird lag stuff. See, like, right there, that was lag. That was just a really bad parse. I might do that one over again just because that was a really shitty parse. 44.6. I was having some weird issues there. I was not getting my bow procs off consistently. I was buffing it more often than I was actually using it when it popped up. So I'll do the parse again, just so it's actually fairer. Right, come on. It's also starting to get a little bit late for me here. Nightblades. Alright, so let's try this again. And hopefully I won't get that weird rebuffing instead of using my bow proc. This is what I'm talking about when I think LE weapon won't be quite as strong on a nightblade. Because we're bar swapping so often. Oh no, I could be wrong, but my initial feeling is that it won't be quite as strong. Like, the disparity won't be quite as, like, obvious. Oh, I'm an execute. I'm really bad at noticing when I'm an execute in a parse. Okay. So that was a better parse. 66.7, and our funnel parse was 66.3. But we also have to take into consideration that we probably got some. We got. Oh, it's only 6%. That's pretty insignificant. I was gonna say we also have to take into consideration, you know, minor vulnerability uptime, but doesn't seem like, because 6% of 8% additional damage done, that's like less than 1%. So not really all that significant in the long run. So it does look like elemental weapon might actually be pretty good on a Magnite Blade compared to funnel health. But again, you are giving up quite a few things here. You're giving up that 8% additional magic on the front bar. You're giving up additional heal. So yeah, it's hard to say. You're giving up that ulti regen. It's going to be hard to say whether you want to use funnel or if you want to use elemental weapon. So I'm not sure if you would want to do that or not. The advantage of running elemental weapon is you can help out with, you know, minor vulnerability uptime if you don't have a sorc or you're not have a healer running IA or something. But you know, you're not really using elemental weapon all that much compared to a, like, let's say mag sorc. Just because as a nightblade you're just bar swapping so often, there might be long stretches where you're not actually able to use elemental weapon for, you know, several abilities. So I probably would stick with funnel. The regen versus drain per second, though, while using elemental weapon is insane. You're only looking at about a 70 difference here, 70 more drain compared to regen if you're using elemental weapon on a Magnite Blade. So sustain's going to be incredible on a Magicka Nightblade. So now the next thing I want to try is let's do ranged, but instead of we will be using acceleration instead. Let's go. Oh, I have to level it. Never mind. We can still just use the base morph of accelerate here. So this pretty much gives us minor force. So that's what it looks like. Now the morph that I would be using, channeled acceleration, that has a cast time, so it's 1.3 seconds, so you'd be casting it for 1.3 seconds and then have that pop up. But it looks like the base morph is pretty much like a rearming trap, just you can use it at range, so you don't have to be, you know, you don't have to be basically within melee range now to get your minor force. You don't have to rely on a healer or a tank or another ranged DPS guarding you in order to get minor force. It's really nice to have. I can also see this potentially having some use in PvP as well, specifically the race against time morph, for scroll runners perhaps. So we'll do another parse here, this time with ranged, using elemental weapon again. And so now the idea behind this is compare the melee parse using LE weapon versus the range parse using accelerate instead. Is now that we have a ranged source of minor force, perhaps now we can just stay at range. Okay, we're out of combat. Of course, the downside is we will have to use the Destro ult. So actually, instead of using Architect here, okay, I don't have it. I'm actually gonna swap over to Burning Spell Weave instead. Where's Burning Spell Weave? Yeah, because if we aren't able to use what's it called? Soul Harvest as our ultimate, then there's no point in using Master Architect. Now there might be instances where you'll be able to like sneak into melee range, in which case by all means stick with Master Architect, like you know, run in, do your Soul Harvest, back out to range. I've done that plenty of times actually, with Mayflower primarily. across basically most of the trials we've run, where I was a nightblade. So this was, back in the past. So now let's go ahead and do this. So again, this is the idea behind this, is to see how well Accelerate does compared to the melee nightblade parse that was running Rearming Trap instead. Got a little bit of lax back there. So we can already see a big drop here, and that's probably due to the loss of Major Slayer from losing out on our Master Architect. Also see here that sustain isn't quite as good because we do have to use Magicka in order to use Accelerate. So that's kind of a downer there, the fact that we lost a fair amount of sustain that way. But we still pulled 40k, which isn't that bad. And actually our regen versus drain was pretty comparable to melee, even though it did feel a lot worse. That just might be because of that one heavy attack we did. So we did have to do a heavy attack. So that's kind of the downside there. But we did lose a lot of DPS compared to the melee parse, which was again 24/7, or 46/7 I should say. And that was running Rearming Trap. So the big problem here with this parse is mainly due to the fact that running Accelerate cost us magic. So let me see, consumption. You can see Accelerate up here was 190, so it's about the same as Twisting Path. So basically you're adding an additional Twisting Path. Now if I had the morph, I managed to morph Accelerate into the one that gives us 36 seconds, I won't have to cast it as much. That pretty much cuts the regen in half, not in half, but about a third. So in that scenario, then yes, I think we wouldn't have that same sustain issue. But I just didn't have time to level it, to morph it. So I'll be redoing this again once I have the time to actually level Accelerate, so I had that 36-second duration, and that should cut this drain to about a third of what it is, so around maybe like 65-ish, 70. So that would definitely help out a sustain here, but it does seem like range DPS didn't see that big of a hit at all. I mean, 40k, that's much better than, well, not much better. I'd say it's about like 4% better than what I'm pulling right now on live running Burning Spellweave and Acuity. I think my best parse on live with Burning Spellweave and Acuity ranged with funnel right now, I think is around like a 37, 38. So it is definitely a DPS boost with the addition of accelerate, as well as using elemental weapon. So that's kind of where it stands right now. So it does seem like elemental weapon is pretty viable, at least for a nightblade and a Magicka Sorc. So I think we have time to, if you guys want to bear with me, I do want to try it out on a Magicka Warden, and see what I'm able to pull on the Magicka Warden. So I will have to do this. Let me make sure it's a template, actually. Warden. Let's do that. That's fine. I don't think it really matters. Okay. Alright. Skip the tutorial. Right. So for Magicka Warden, setup's pretty much going to be identical, more or less, to what we're running on live right now. So it'd be 5 Master Architect, 5 Acuity. Just instead of 1-piece Kina, we're able to wear something like 2-piece Scoria, perhaps. I'd probably end up doing Scoria just because we don't have much in terms of lightning shock damage. But we do have a lot of dots, so Winter's Revenge counts as a dot, Blockade counts as a dot, and obviously Fetcher Infection counts as a dot. So we have 3 dots running. So that's pretty good for Scoria. Come on, let's load, let's load, let's load. And so hopefully we'll be able to see what the Magicka Warden is able to pull here. So now let's turn on combat metrics and multi-craft. Do some changes here with our add-ons. Nope, nope, don't want that. Off, off. I want to import from my main. Reload UI. Alright. So I am a Dark Elf for my Magicka Warden. That's just because I'm a Dark Elf on live, and I kind of want to see what my character on live will also pull. Oh, I also have to change a couple of settings here. So the settings I normally play with are... This is what I normally do. I usually have attack innocence off, obviously take off loot history, and make sure quick cast is on, turn off tutorials, because I'm not a nub. Interface, I like having nameplates on. It's really useful in raids, so I can call out people. Under ability bar is always show. I don't like to have combat text going. That's just to save my frames during raids, especially since we're progressing in Viahof. That was one of the big things there, trying to save frames in the 4th boss. Then turn off skill advisor because it's absolute garbage. So let's get all of our skills back up. And we want Blue Betty, and we want Fetcher Infection. I guess I will do Bird of Prey, since we are doing a solo parse, so we won't be able to use guard at all, which is kind of a bummer. There it is. Winter's Revenge. So yeah, so one thing I'm thinking about is Piercing Cold will affect Elemental Weapon, because Elemental Weapon does magic damage. The additional boost, I should say, is magic damage, so it's a 6% boost to that. So maybe it'll do something? I don't know. It's only a 6% boost, so on an 8k, that's about 500 damage. So not that much. But, I mean, every little bit counts, right? It also would impact our, what's it called? It would also impact the passive that launches out the orbs. I'm blanking on the name now. Let's do this. You want the additional health. And then under guild, let's do mages first. We want inner light. Then under Psijic order, You want at the very least, you're gonna want these two passives if you're a DPS. This decreases the cost of your Psijic Order abilities, and Spell Orb is the launches out the orbs. These next two are going to be more important for tanks, I think. So Concentrated Barrier, when you have a Psijic Order ability slotted and you're blocking, you get a damage shield that absorbs, let me level it up completely. It absorbs 5k damage, and then it recharges back to full strength after you spend 10 seconds not blocking. So it's a nice little boost, but I don't think it's going to make that big of a difference, because you do have to have an ability slotted. And then Deliberation, I'm not sure if they're going to nerf this, because having that major protection while you're casting or channeling an ability, that's pretty strong. So that's something to take into consideration. I feel like minor protection would be a better buff to have, because this would actually really feel like a little bit overpowered in PvP, I feel like, because let's say like you're like casting Time Stop, which has a channel, you know, you're gaining major protection while you're casting that, or if you're running, basically it's whenever you're casting it. So that's, I'm a little bit iffy on that. Might as well get Accelerate. Now the other skills while I'm here. So Time Stop is pretty much what you'd expect it. I'll level it. So those are the two morphs. So you have Borrowed Time, which negates healing done on enemies that are stunned. But at least a certain amount. So it's 5,000. You can see here on the tooltip. It's every next 5,000 additional healing they get is completely negated for 3 seconds. So I can see this being used pretty often in PvP. I can see that. And then Time Freeze reduces removes the channel, but it takes longer to stun the enemies. So Time Stop and Borrowed Time, it's 3 seconds until it's stunned. Time Freeze is 4 seconds when they stun, but I think it's 1.5 seconds, I think, for the stun versus 4 seconds for the stun on Time Freeze. So it's a pretty big jump. It's 2.5 seconds increase. And the stun lasts for 3 seconds, and I do believe you can CC break out of it. And then Imbue Weapons. So this is the one we're going to be testing. Accelerate, you saw that. Mend Wounds is the 4th skill here. So basically it replaces your light or heavy attack with basically a heal. So your light attack would do a heal over time, and your heavy attack will heal every second while you're channeling it. So this is probably going to be useful for healers potentially. I'm not 100% sure. I don't really main heal that much. I can, but I don't like healing. I don't like having all that pressure on me. So it does last for 3 seconds, so basically it'll be like you use this ability on your resto bar or lightning bar, then you channel it. So your resto pull and your heavy lightning pull, your heavy attacks there last for, I believe it's 2 seconds for resto, a little bit over 2 seconds for resto, and 2.5 for lightning. So you'll get, I believe it's 4 ticks for each of those different heavy attacks. So you basically get 4 of those heavy attack heals. And then light attacks heal for a smaller amount, but it's a heal over time, so it's over 10 seconds. So now the two morphs. First one is Symbiosis, that one's on the right. You heal yourself as well, based on a percentage to the amount that you heal on the other person. Then the other morph is Mend Spirit, which is on the left, which increases the allies' physical and spell resistance while you heal them. But it is a named morph. It is Major Resolve and Major Ward. So if they already have it up, there's no point in really having this morph. So you're probably going to end up using Symbiosis if you're going to use this morph, just because Major Resolve, Major Ward, most classes have access to those buffs already. Stamsorks have it. Stamp Nightblades already have it from using Surprise Attack. If you have a Warden healer and they're using Ice Fortress, or I forget what the other morph is. Actually, I'm on a Warden, I can tell you what it is. So if you're using Expansive Frost Cloak, your DPS already have it, so I don't think that morph is going to be quite as useful as Symbiosis. Finally, Meditate, which I think is going to be very interesting to use actually. So this is going to be a channeled ability. So basically you're just sitting there while you're channeling this ability, and it heals you, and as well as restores Magicka and stamina every second while you're channeling. Now the two morphs here, Deep Thoughts, which is on the left, increases the amount of Magicka and stamina you restore. So you can see here it's about like a 200 additional Magicka and stamina. Then Introspection, which is the morph on the right, while you maintain it, you basically increase the amount of health that you're gaining every tick by 10% up to a maximum of 50%. And so I can see this potentially being useful for tanks. Okay, right. I think the stream went down for a little bit there. OBS kind of had a hiccup, I believe. Internet's perfectly fine. But as I was saying, I don't know if that you guys caught that, but when you're using Meditate, if you have Deliberation, you're also gaining major protection. You won't be able to block anything, so that's why I think this is going to be a pretty interesting ability to use for tanks in PvE. I'm not 100% sure yet. I haven't had a chance to tank anything on the PTS yet, so we'll still have to see whether this is going to be useful or not. So let's get back to finishing up our thing here. And get our racial passives. So I'll also show you guys what each of them looks like. Oop, not that one. We'll need to get these as well as enchanting all the way up so I can make the... Again, I am using mechanical acuity. But I'm going to be using jewelry, so I just need to get my jewelry up. And then wood crafting, woodworking, because I'm using an Inferno Staff front bar. Alright, so that should be everything I need. CPs. Christian, I'm just going to test out Magicka Warden with the new Psijic Skill line. That's what we're going to be doing pretty soon here. I'm just setting everything up. Let's do 40. This is going to be an Alkosh setup, Alkosh infused Taurogs. And an additional 13 going to Staff Expert here. I'm pretty sure that's a jump point. Nope, it's not. Oh wait, 13, that's what we want. Okay, 13 is a jump point. Sweet. And over here, I think I have to work this out. I think it was 66. 56. This is for a balanced, yeah, it's 66, 56, 64 if you're not putting anything into Quick Recovery or Bastion. Alright, so I do need to level. Actually, I should get gear out first. Let's put on a costume. Let's just go with the standard boob window outfit. So we want acuity. Get rid of you. So it's a trial set. Architect. Let's see, I actually want to take out consumables as well because we do have... Okay, I think it's in here. Yes, it is. We do have Crown Experience Scroll, which will help us level that a lot faster. Then we want... We will be playing range, we'll be playing melee, so we will want... Scoria. So we'll do Heavy Helm. Medium shoulders. Alright, so I'll show you guys what the Psijic Order skill lines all look like. So you already saw Imbue Weapon, you already saw Accelerate, and you didn't see Mend Wounds, you didn't see Meditate. I'll actually also show you Undo as well. So Undo, it costs 153 ultimate. It's fairly cheap. I actually think it's bugged right now because you can see here that the morphs actually cost less ultimate and neither of them have like a reduced cost effect. So Precognition casts, you can cast it while crowd control and then you gain crowd control immunity when you cast it. And then the Temporal Guard one, while you slot it you gain minor protection. So I do see this actually, this morph, Temporal Guard at least, replacing Barrier for tanks because a lot of tanks now are using Balance, which basically is your source of Magicka sustain now. You just give up a little bit of health, you gain some magic back, so Magicka regen really isn't quite as important, so that 10% regen from Barrier isn't going to be as useful as I think that minor protection from Temporal Guard. In addition to this, while you have Temporal Guard, I think you gain Concentrated Barrier as well. So that's a little bit of a nice boost. Again, I don't think that 5k damage shield is really going to make that much of a difference. Think about like how big that is compared to an Igneous Shield. Igneous Shield, like on a typical tank running like 35k health, that's like around maybe like a 12k shield, a 13k shield, something like that. So that's only like half of that size, so I don't think it's going to be that big of a difference here. Alright, so time stop looks like that. So that's about as long as the channel is. So it's basically like you're putting up an actual barrier. So you got the channel there. I don't think Srendar is currently showing the cast thing for that. And you guys have already seen Imbue Weapons, some Mend Wounds, and then your next light and heavy attack will heal instead of actually, you know, damaging things. Then Meditate. This is what Meditate looks like. So some people I was talking to are actually worried that you'd be like sitting cross-legged in the air, but this is actually pretty cool. And then you just, it's a toggleable, so you hit it once, you're in that meditative state, and you hit a second time and you're out of that state. And then I will slot Undo so you guys can see what happens. We will be going over to Spell Scar to, I actually need to grab a staff, I just realized this, so I can actually hit things. Destro, Infused Inferno, that'll automatically swap me to that bar there. So I'll actually need to put it on my front bar. I need some damage abilities here so I can actually kill stuff. Do that, and Winter's Revenge. Then I'll have a shield as well, so that way I don't die. Dying is not good. And then we'll go over to Spell Scar and quickly grind up Imbue Weapons to Elemental Weapons here. And hopefully I'll be able to get enough ultimate so I can show you Undo. I also don't have any food, so this is going to be pretty interesting. Spell Scar is my grinding spot of choice. Unless it's filled, in which case I try to find somebody in one of my guilds who wants to do Spell Scar. Or not Spell Scar, Skyreach. But Spell Scar is my preferred grinding spot. So remember, Accelerate, we get that major expedition. That's why I'm spamming it. So Imbue Weapons is actually pretty fast to level compared to like other skills. So it's the second ability. I believe you need level 4 in Psijic order, or maybe 3 in order to get it. So it's actually fairly quick to level. I don't think we'll need to pull that much stuff. Let's kill these and see what it actually brings us to. That brought us up to 4, but we can't quite morph it, so I'll have to hit something real fast. But again, I do have the pocket 150 additional. Die, damn it. Alright, so we can morph it now. But I think I should get enough ultimate to use Undo. So here's what Undo looks like. So you actually go all the way back. And I didn't have that much difference in resources, so you didn't really see that big of a change. But, you know, if I was down to like, I don't know, let's say I got hit in, like in Cyrodiil, let's say I got one of those like cost increase poisons on me and I ended up completely blowing a Magicka in like all of 4 seconds because I got hit by that poison. I can just hit Undo and get all my Magicka back and say screw you to whoever applied the poisons to me. Okay, so now that we have that, we're going to port to that home, which is in Summerset. So for those of you guys who don't know, Summerset is its own zone, and then Artaeum is actually its own zone as well. So just obviously nothing here right now because I haven't done these quests just because I don't want to spoil it for myself. First home is going to be here. Second home, I believe, is in Shimmerine. This is over here, and then a trial is about in the middle. Cloud Rest is right there. So, in case you guys were wondering where all the things are on the PTS, yeah. So, if you guys already don't know, Mayflower right now we're just going to be going all in for Cloud Rest for the next 2 weeks. So Thursday, and then the next Monday and Thursday is going to be Cloud Rest, and then after that we'll see whether people want to do templates for Cloud Rest or if you want to just go achievement hunting, because some of us do want to get a couple of achievements. Like I still need speedrun on Hell Ra on my tank, so that should be pretty easy to get though. So, and I think a couple other people want to try to get a couple of the achievements in. Actually, need to change my controls. A couple of people want to go for the a couple of achievements in I think halls, was it? I think they wanted to try it for like not no death halls, but like speedrun halls or something like that. So that'll be interesting to go for. Okay, so now let's go ahead and craft our acuity. So we need 2 rings. This is going to obviously be all on Bloodthirsty, because Bloodthirsty is probably going to be the trait unless they nerf it. I fully anticipate them nerfing Bloodthirsty, by the way. My thinking is, so when Bloodthirsty's golded out all the way, the damage increase is 20%. I think they're going to drop it down to 15 if they're going to nerf it. And right now Bloodthirsty is actually additive on itself, but multiplicative with all other sources of damage done. So I believe, so we think the way it's working based on like the math, LZH worked this out actually. Bloodthirsty is stacking additively with itself, so it's getting an extra 60% damage when you have 3 Bloodthirsty. But compared to the other sources of damage done, so things like Binder Berserk, if you have the Animal Companions passive as a warden, that's stacking multiplicatively. So that's partially why it's so strong. Now the other thing too with Bloodthirsty is the more DPS you have that have Bloodthirsty, the shorter your execute phase is actually going to be. So your overall DPS is going to be ultimately lower because it's a shorter fight. But on the other hand, execute's also going by very, very fast, so that's also a plus. Then I need Inferno Staff here. But I do think they will nerf Bloodthirsty down to 15%. I would be surprised if they didn't touch it at all. That's the Psijic Order. I actually like how the new motifs look, the new weapons. I especially like the Psijic Order staves. So when I equip it, you'll be able to see what it looks like. And then the Scale Caller stuff too, I think is really cool. Alright, so now let's go ahead and equip our stuffs. Then Inferno Staff on the front bar. Everyone has their own tastes. I don't need to transmute anything, I don't think. I do need to enchant my jewelry. Did I? Let me double check, make sure I leveled enchanting. Okay, I did. So I need... So I'm going to be doing 2 Magicka harm, so spell damage, and then 1 Magicka regen. Then Makoma is regen. Then I need fire on the front bar. Weapon damage on the back bar. And I need a Magicka enchant on the medium scoria piece I have. I need to take out some food from the bank. So let's get some gold food. Alright, so let's do this. That flame. Weapon damage. This becomes magic glyph. Your food. And then let's change our bars around now. So now let's go ahead and start changing our bars around. So we need to double slot our bear still. Match on the back bar. We're gonna be. Actually, I let me see here. I normally have Winter's Revenge, Ellie Blockade. I think I normally have this here. Then I have Fetcher Infection on the front bar. Then I normally have Inner Light double barred here, so one there, and one here, and then I think, yeah, and then I need to do actually no, my shield's normally back here because this is normally where I have a Destro Staff ability. This is where I normally have Crushing Shock. Yeah, there we go. And then Animal Companions, Bird of Prey, Bird of Prey here. Yeah, so this is normally where Guard goes, so Guard would be where Bird of Prey is. But since it's a solo parse, I obviously can't guard anybody. I do need to have a Destro Staff ability here, so I have Crushing Shock for the utility. This would normally be Screaming Cliff Racer, so I'll actually do two parses. We'll compare Screaming Cliff Racer to the Elemental Weapon. So this is where my shield would be. So this is kind of what my bar setup would normally look like here on a Magicka Warden. So I have my food, now I just need pots. Cornflower, lady smock, water, hyacinth. We'll do 20, so that should give us 80, which is enough. Alright, thanks for sticking around through that really boring, this boring section of the video. I know that, like, crafting potions and crafting stuff and leveling skills doesn't make for a exciting stream. Hopefully, they'll actually give us the skills fully leveled next week. Yeah, that was kind of like, hey, we're going to give you skills, but you're going to have to level them all. And it's kind of like, well, screw you too, Zos. There we go. Okay, I'm having the delayed bar swap, so we'll have to reload UI once I get my ultimate out. Let's put these on our quick slots here. Oh, can't do it in combat. Typical. Alright, that should be enough. There we go. Then I'll do a reload UI, so I don't have that. Oh. Reload UI, so that way I don't have that bar swap lag. For some reason, Reload UI seems to fix that. At least on PTS, so there we go. Let's get our Barry McBearstein out. Oh wait, actually don't need that health glyph on Scoria, because Scoria has a health as their one piece. So I can actually go double Magicka glyph on my Scoria pieces. Go. There we go. That's better. So let's see what happens. Remember that at least remember that the Magicka Warden has kind of a dynamic rotation because all of our dots kind of have differing durations. Oh no! Got that lag spike going. So you'll note it. I'm interested in seeing what the comp metrics actually looks like at the end of this. Considering that we don't have a spam, our spammable is actually our light attacks now. Oh, I need to turn on acuity too so I can better time my bear proc. So I can still see that it is definitely low. Our DPS is low compared to Max Arc and stuff, so I didn't really expect that to change too much, to be honest. Unfortunately, Warden's kind of got the short end of the stick. So one downside of running elemental weapon instead of birds, I just realized, is you don't get that additional ulti regen from the animal passive. So there we go. Let's get rid of Winter's Revenge. Oh. Fuck you, Pacruti. I don't want any of your goddamn boxes. Where is it? Combat metrics. Yeah. I'll also bind this as well. Alright, so 37.3 was what we got with Elemental Weapon. And as expected, look at that. Look at the DPS from light attacks. That's just silly. And in terms of light attack ratio, we have 140 over 161, which gives us about 87.87, so could be better, but overall, pretty good. So that is with Elemental Weapon. So our light attacks are actually a spammable. Elemental Weapon 2 you can use as spammable. So that's actually quite nice. It actually deals quite a lot of DPS, about as much as our light attacks do. So even if they nerf light attacks by like 30%, 40%, Elemental Weapon is still going to be pretty decent there. Alright, let me turn on Acuity and reload UI real fast just so I can have a visualization of when the Acuity is actually going to proc so I can better time my ultimate. Okay, there we go. Alright, so that was with the Imbue Weapon. So now let's try with Screaming Cliff Racer. So this is, or pretty much more or less identical. Oh, it's purple, whatever. It's not a big deal. So this is pretty much going to be more or less identical to what you're running on live, just with Scoria instead of One Piece Kina. So let's try this again, this time running birds as our spammable. Will they nerf light attacks before the update? I think they will. I mean, I like the buff to light attacks, but it's also very unbalanced. Well, not unbalanced, but it seems like it was a little bit too much. I mean, you saw how much DPS was coming from our light attacks there. So I do think they're going to nerf the light attack damage. My thinking is, if I was a developer at least, I'd probably bring it down to maybe like 33 to 40% of what it currently is on the PTS. That way it's still going to be a buff for Magicka, but it's not going to be like super what we see right now. So the difficult part about this is trying to figure out when you can use your ultimate and when you want to save it for your acuity proc. So I'm trying to figure that out myself, but it's definitely takes a little bit of figuring out. Alright, I'm having some weird things happening. Some of my skills are not going off. So this parse is actually going to be a little bit on the low end. So that's what I managed to pull self-buff. There was that weird thing in the middle, so this probably could be just a little bit higher, like maybe like 35.8 maybe. It's not like going to be like a 1k increase or anything just because of that little bit of lag. But it does seem like Imbue Elemental Weapon is going to be better. So if we take a look at the averages and the maxes for Cliff Racer, oh, I really had to reload UI, so I actually have to do the Elemental Weapon one again. But that's fine. I'll just do it again. But if we just take a look at the tooltip, so 8275 for Elemental Weapon, and again, this is only level 1, so this is going to be stronger once we get up to level, rank it up all the way up to 4. This Screaming Cliff Racer is already at 4, and it's doing 94.99 magic damage. So Screaming Cliff Racer has much more damage compared to Elemental, but for some reason the parse wasn't quite as good. So I'm going to do this again. Maybe that little like bump in the middle did have an adverse effect. So I'll just do the Cliff Racer parse again, then I'll do another Elemental Weapon parse, and we'll see. Take a look specifically at the average and the max there. So it does, but just based on that, it looks like, I don't know, I'd have to do it again because that weird thing in the middle where half of my skills weren't firing, that kind of sucked. Another thing too that I realized is perhaps you could go with Necro instead of a Master Architect, but having that additional Major Slayer, it's a really nice buff. I wouldn't want to give it up, especially because you would be the only spec capable of giving it to your ranged DPS, besides a Bobo Stamina Warden running War Machine, which might be a thing. I actually don't know. I haven't tested any like two-hander or bow builds since the patch, since the PTS was released. But bow build should have gotten a really nice buff with Summerset. And you also won't need to run the Master's Bow anymore on your front bar. You can do like an Acuity Bow on your front bar, which would be really, really nice. I think that'll actually end up having a really nice boost to Bobo DPS. Okay, and I'd have to test it out. And the two-hander builds as well, you won't have to run something like the Asylum two-hander anymore, potentially. You might be able to run like the, again, probably like an Acuity two-hander or something. What also sucks is that mag wardens don't have a reliable execute. Our executors are bear. While the bear is awesome, it's an ultimate. So, not like a spammable, I would say, for an execute. Okay. That time we got 36, 15, 3, 26, 8, 8. So that's pretty much everything there. So we don't have any sort of minor vulnerability uptime. So now I did lose the elemental weapon part, so I'll have to do that again. But I think I'd have to take a look at the minor vulnerability uptime from the elemental weapon and make a comparison there. Because, but again, if it's anything like the nightblade parse, it'll be so small it probably won't make that much of a difference. But you still have to double check. I don't know if you guys can actually hear the noise that it makes, but it's a really annoying noise that imbue weapon makes. I also feel like Magicka wardens don't have quite as like high uptime on acuity as other classes, because you don't have as many dots. If you think about how many dots Magicka wardens have, you have basically Fetter Infection, Blockade, and Winter's Revenge. So you have 3 dots going at any given time, along with your spammable. So you really have like 4 sources of damage coming in per second at most. But if you compare that to, let's say, like a Magsork, perhaps. Magsorks have access to, what would it be? You have Liquid Lightning, Blockade, Curse, and Force Pulse, which really counts as 3 hits because it's 3 direct damage hits. So you can get like 5 in each time. Nightblades have Cripple, Blockade, and Path, along with Funnel or whatever they're going to end up using as their spammable. So yeah, wardens don't really have a lot of dots, so, and their dots that they do have aren't what I would consider to be particularly strong dots. That should be a good crit right there. Alright. 37-8. So yeah, elemental weapon is probably going to be the new spammable. Screw birds. So 25% minor vulnerability uptime. So I'm just going to do the math off screen really quick. So let's see, that's 1 plus, what is it, 25. Okay, and then what did we get for our bird parse? 36. Okay. So elemental weapon still wins out. So I just did really quick math. So the theoretical max, if we had identical minor vulnerability uptime on the bird parse, would be 36,773. If minor vulnerability was the exact same in terms of like uptime, so we had 25% minor vulnerability. So elemental weapon still wins out by about 1k. So it seems like elemental weapon is winning out over our bird spam. So it looks like we might have a new spammable there. So that's actually pretty awesome. So now the next thing I kind of want to try out is actually The bird spammable build is actually Style Anima's build that I am using. So Styles uses 5 Acuity, 5 Master Architect, 1 piece Kino, and then she has her spammable being the bird. The build that I have on my channel is what I prefer to use, although the sustain is a little bit worse, and that's the Asylum front bar, 3 willpower, 5 Master Architect, and like 2 piece Scoria. So I'm going to actually try that now. I'm going to try my build out and see how that compares to this build here. So let's see here. So I will keep Master Architect, keep the Scoria. I will need to dump the willpower, get willpower. And we'll be using Perfect Asylum because we want to do, you know, best of the best. You know, let's compare the ceilings of these different builds. So we'll do that, and then willpower jewelry. I will have to transmute these as well as update the enchants on them, and so that basically allows me to take birds out. This is going to be my spammable now, and so this would still be guard. This would actually be my shield now, so now I can put LE Drain on the front bar here, and then on my back bar I can take this out because now I don't have to have my shield here anymore, and then I can just double bar instead Inner Light. So that's kind of the advantage of my build over Style Anima's builds. Advantage wouldn't necessarily be what I would call it. Just based on like my own parsing, self-buffed and in raids, Styles builds does end up pulling a little bit ahead of my own build, but my build gives the group additional minor vulnerability uptime. You get the double bar Inner Light, and so there are advantages between my builds and Anima's Styles builds. I do think Styles' build is the stronger build though. And I actually didn't think about doing that build until I saw her video on it. How's Magicka Warden doing so far? Pretty good. Compared to what we're doing on live at least. We're pulling like 4 or 5k better, just from the buffs to light attacks, as well as the buffs to, as well as the addition of Bloodthirsty. I'm still waiting. Hopefully they'll have like a buff to bird damage or a buff to Fetcher Infection damage. I think if they buff those two by like 10%, we would end up seeing... Finish this. Okay, so yeah, a lot of people now are running Cloud Rest on Vet, so I'm interested in seeing if they do any sort of rebalance on Cloud Rest. Those of you guys who've watched the couple of Cloud Rest streams that we've done, it's definitely a very fun trial. I like it, but I do wish they did something more similar to Maw, just because I think pretty much every single endgame raider that I've talked to prefers Maw over Asylum and over Cloud Rest, and we really wish there was a new Maw instead of Cloud Rest. All right, I have the bar swap delay again, so I'll have to reload. Before I reload UI, let's save these parses so I can compare them. So let's save that one. Let's save this one. Let's just double check to see that they're there. Okay, they're there. Faruna Telvani. Let's see if the bar swap delay is still there. Yeah, it is, so... Reload... It helps if I spell reload right. I know you guys can't see my chat window, but I was spelling it as like reclass or something like that, reclass. Fingers were off on my typing. Alright, so let's try this. So this is my build. So this is the Asylum Perfected, Infused Inferno front bar, 3 willpower, 5 Architect, 2 Scoria. So we'll see if that does any better than the LE weapon parse that we had earlier. So I do believe that my build is definitely more resource intensive compared to Styles' build. Using birds as your spammable, I think is a little bit more Magicka efficient than Force Pulse, or in my case, Crushing Shock. I chose the wrong morph. Or rather, I chose the morph that I normally use, which is Crushing Shock, because I like that utility. Yeah, I really, really enjoy Maw. Maw is one of my... It's probably my favorite trial, actually. Like, the adds were the right amount of difficulty, the add pulls are the right length, there's enough adds between bosses. The add pulls were sufficiently dangerous enough that, like, you know, you kind of want to be a little bit careful with progression groups, how you do your add pulls. But they weren't long and tedious like Hall's was, and there wasn't a lot of, like, you know, like elemental, or not elemental, environmental damage coming in Maw. It's pretty much like, here comes the negate from the Sun Eater. Okay, so then we got 36, about, let's just call it 37 because it's pretty close. So we got 37k this time with Crushing Shock with my build. Let's pull up the LE weapon parse and to compare debuff uptime. So we had 25% minor vulnerability uptime here, 55% minor vulnerability uptime here. So if you actually knock off that extra 30% minor vulnerability uptime, you know, we actually did worse here. So, for instance, if we do difference here, this was, I'm doing the math off screen. So if we had identical minor vulnerability uptime on this parse, so if you had 55% instead of 25%, this parse would actually be at 38.7k. So that ain't good. But on the other hand, this is Crushing Shock, not Force Pulse. And if you are going for the max amount of DPS, you would actually be using Force Pulse instead. So why don't we try that right now, actually. Let's pick the correct morph. So let's go here to respecs, skill respecs. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to redo all of my skills, which is fine. It's whatever. Includes passives and everything too, but now we will try it out with Force Pulse instead of Crushing Shock, because the DPS difference between Force Pulse and Crushing Shock is fairly noticeable. It's not like a huge increase, but it's definitely a noticeable increase. So we'll definitely see a DPS boost, and then we'll see whether or not we'll be able to break that 37.8k that we pulled earlier. But again, the one thing too is that with the Asylum Staff you have a lot higher minor vulnerability uptime. So once we control for that, is this going to be any better? Who knows? Maybe, maybe not. I don't think it will be. I still think Elemental Weapon's going to win out, but have to do the parses to actually make sure. Dark Elf. And here, I won't level, actually no, I will level everything up entirely in case I want to do other stuff real quick. At the very least, I'll upgrade all these. I don't think I will though. Okay, so now let's go ahead and put everything back where it should be. Alright. So again, this is going to be with it's going to be with, oh, got this. Force Pulse instead of Crushing Shock. And what do I have here? This was Ellie Drain. Okay, so I need to get some ultimate back up. Alright, so let's see here. Warden's doing pretty well, Caden. I'll show you the parses here. So this was the elemental weapon parse, which is whopping 37.8k. But the DPS boost is more from the light attack boost and the addition of Bloodthirst than it is the actual buffs to the Magicka Warden. So it's still falling behind compared to like the Magicka Nightblade. So for reference, Magicka Nightblade parse was 46k. So we're still like 9 to 8k below the Magicka Nightblade, which is probably still going to be the best Magicka DPS. So yeah, not that great. Compared to other Magicka DPS classes. Now compared to like what you need to beat Vet Trials, totally viable. I mean, it's a pretty good buff, the light attack buffs. But nothing specific to Magicka Wardens, so this is kind of universal. So everybody got that boost, so that's what it is. And with my build, so actually we're going to test my build right now. Yes, so the Bird of Prey skill, this one here is just for that passive here. This is for advanced species, increases their damage done. This is actually normally where I would put guard instead. I would actually put stalwart guard here instead, but because it's a solo parse, I obviously can't guard anything, so I can't get that minor force uptime. But I'm actually going to try out accelerate. Maybe not. Actually, won't try it out. I'll actually level accelerate first, and then try it accelerate out. But okay, enough talking. Let's get the bear out. And yeah, Christian, Force Pulse is nice, the extra damage is nice, but yeah, that utility from Crushing is very nice to have in certain fights. Like if you're going into AS, I would use Crushing, not Force Pulse. Hoth, I would still use it, just for the interrupts on the second boss, which are pretty important. And I think you're going to want a Crushing Shock in Cloud Rest too. One of the mini-bosses has an interruptible. Let's go ahead and try this out. Do another heavy attack here. Yeah, mag decay on live right now is not great, Caden, because if you consider you're competing with melee DPS, you know, and so you have to compete against Stam Sorks and Stam DKs, which and Stam Nightblades, which are pulling like, you know, pretty goddamn high, so you can still definitely clear all the content in the game running a mag decay, but it's kind of like the question, why handicap yourself? Why handicap your group by bringing a mag decay when you can bring a Stam Nightblade instead? Which is kind of sad, but it's nice that all Magicka DPS are getting a buff, including mag DKs. Alright, so there we go. So we saw 37.3 with Force Pulse. This is pretty good. But again, we have to consider the minor vulnerability uptime. So we got 60% this time. That's coming from the Perfected Asylum Staff procs. So if we compare that to our minor vulnerability uptime here, that's a difference of, what was it, 60 compared to 25, so that's a difference of 35. So if we do the math, doing this off screen again, so this parse, if we had identical minor vulnerability uptime, would be 39.3k. So yeah, elemental weapon looks like it's gonna win out for Mag Warden. And we take a look at the regen per drain, which is another important thing that you want to consider when you're making a build. You know, how well can you sustain this? 1509, 1575, so we're looking at about like a 70-ish disparity. Over here, 1586 to 1752, so that's, if I'm doing the math right, quick mental math, that's about 170. So you're seeing about 100 additional drain per second compared to using elemental weapon here. And then if we look at the styles build here, the bird build, 1470 compared to 1643, so quick mental math, that's about 170. So I have an idea. I think that I have a feeling that elemental weapon is actually going to end up winning out. This is actually a really nice buff to Magicka Wardens. I think on live right now I'm hitting like maybe 32k, 33k on a 6mm dummy. Running Style Anima's build, I think. Or it might be my build. They both pull pretty similar, but Styles' build, obviously. Well, if we do the math real quick on Styles' build, so which one was... So this is my build, so the 60% minor vulnerability uptime, and this is Styles' build, so no minor vulnerability. So if we do the quick math here, let's see, so this would be 36052. So her build would pull 37.8-ish compared to the build that I have here, which is 37.3. So Styles' build is a little bit better. So the difference isn't all that great, but the sustain is probably a little bit worse on this build, particularly the Force Pulse build. But I like having that extra utility there. Hello Sophie, nice to see you here. Isn't it late for you? It's like 11:30 for you, isn't it? Okay, so let's see here. So that's Warden, and I think I'm gonna call the night here. My stand is now mag decay. Yeah, stam decay to mag decay, it's a pretty big drop actually. Like on a 6mm dummy parse, because you're going from like around 40 to like 32, 33. That's a pretty big loss. But at the very least, you're prepared to. What? Yeah. I did not say so if we. I said Sophie. If you have the closed captioning on, YouTube's word algorithm is stupid. It thinks many things are incorrect words. So yeah. But yeah. So I think I'll call it here, guys. I'm gonna try to get on the PTS again tomorrow night. Try to do Magplar, specifically the melee Magplar. We're going to see whether how well the melee Magplar stands up to its closest relative, the Magicka DK, and of course compare that to stamina DPS as well. And I think that would cover all the different Magicka specs. So Magicka Templar, Magicka Warden, Magicka Sorc, Magicka Nightblade, Magicka DK. So that's pretty much, yeah, that would cover all the Magicka classes right now. My mag DK is pulling on live or right here, because right now on PTS my mag DK is pulling, let me see, I might have the parts saved actually. Is it this one? Nope. This is a Stam Nightblade parse. Here it is. So I'm pulling like 41.4, 41.5 on a Magicka on PTS. But on live, I think I'm pulling around... Sophie would know. Sophie has all of my parses. I think it's like a 31, 32. I think. Sophie, if you guys don't know, is the GM for Hellfire Dominion. And so I sent her all of my parses for the raid team because she's responsible for all the paperwork. She likes paperwork. Actually, I don't know if she likes paperwork or not. I know I don't like it. I don't know anybody who likes paperwork. So, yeah. Yeah. So on PTS, this is, when was this? It doesn't have a date. It looks like. Yeah, so it doesn't have a date, but I want to say this was... Well, there weren't any major combat changes for Magickas between week 1 and week 2, so this is probably still around what I'm pulling. And this was with... Let's see here... Burning Spellweave, and... Got Zon times 8, so this is Burning Spellweave and Elfbane, was this parse here. So 41.4 with Burning Spellweave and Elfbane. And I don't think I have another parse saved up. Yeah, I don't have another parse saved up from my Magicka. I think this is my Magicka parse on live right now, though. This is an old one. So on live, I'm hitting around 31.2. So think about it that way. It's like a 10k boost in DPS. So yeah, 41.4 versus 31.1. So it's a pretty big boost right there. Yeah. Sun and Burning Spellweave will work very well next patch, Caden. I know I was doing a lot of... it's on one of the previous streams that I've had, but when I was testing out a bunch of different combinations with Magickas. Like, I think I tried out Elfbane and Burning Spellweave, Elfbane and Sun, Burning Spellweave and Sun, Burning Spellweave and Acuity. I didn't try Elfbane and Acuity. I kind of want to go back and try that, actually. But yeah, Sun and Burning Spellweave was actually pulling pretty similar to Burning Spellweave and Elfbane, and which was pulling just a little bit shy of Burning Spellweave and Acuity, if I'm remembering correctly. Again, you can check back on, I think it was the first stream that I did on the PTS. So that's pretty, they're all pretty similar, so Sun and Burning Spellweave will definitely work very well next patch. The advantage of you running Sun as well is because the 2-piece effect is health. You can run 2 Magicka glyphs instead of having to swap out a large piece with a health glyph, so that's really nice. Magicka pulling highest, or still Nightblade on PTS? Still the Nightblade on PTS. So this was the Magicka parse, so 41.4, and this was a Nightblade parse. Right? This is a Nightblade parse? Yeah, this is a Nightblade parse on the PTS. Let me see. Date times 18. So this is week 1. So this is around the same. This was probably during the same stream, actually, or the same time frame that I did it. Yeah, same time frame, about 20 minutes apart. So Magna Blades are still pulling ahead. So that's what it stands right now. Melee Magicka Nightblade is pulling pretty similar. So this is Nightblade, Magicka Nightblade, and then this was the Stamina Nightblade parse that I did. And this was Two Fang. Let me see. It should have been Two Fang and Acuity. Yeah, Two Fang and Acuity. All of my numbers here for some reason are halved, so this should actually be like 26% uptime. But I did hit a little bit higher, I think, once. I think I hit like 46. So Nightblades, both Stam and Mag, are pulling pretty neck and neck. But after they, again, this is my speculation. This is speculation part right now. But if they nerf light attacks and they nerf Bloodthirsty, then I think Stam Nightblades are going to pull ahead of the Magicka Nightblade by about 2 to 3k. But it would depend on how badly they nerf light attacks. Because you can see here, light attacks right now are hitting pretty strong. 35k crit. That's just a little bit silly. When 30% of your DPS comes from light attacks, you kind of have to tone that down a little bit. 13.5 DPS from light attacks. That's a little bit silly. Max work on PTS. I don't think I have any saved here. But I was testing out Max work earlier. and I believe I was hitting around 40k on Mag Sorc right now, and that was with 552 running Elemental Weapon. So it's pretty similar to the melee Mag Nightblade, but still about 5k short of the Magicka Nightblade, melee Magicka Nightblade. It's pretty similar to the ranged Magicka Nightblade. I think ranged Magicka Nightblade was around 41k or so, maybe around 40k. So they're still pretty strong. But I think I don't consider myself to be very good in Magicka Sorcs. I think there are plenty of other Magicka Sorcs out there that I think are a lot better. Royo is one of them. So I can't really comment on Magicka Sorcs too much, but I do think Magicka Sorcs are doing pretty well. They're pretty much going to be neck and neck with Nightblades. Yeah, so for Caden, yeah, you want a QD front bar if you're doing a QD Burning Spellweave on your Mag DK. Let's see, what sets were I using on Sorc? I was using, so I was still running ranged, so I was still using Lambris as my Monster Helm set, and then I was going Acuity and Julianos as the two sets on the Magicka Sorcerer, and I was using double Inferno staves, so I kind of want to go back and try out Netch and Acuity with double Lightning staves and see how that plays out, because we know Netch does impact your light and heavy attacks as well. So I kind of want to see how that plays out, actually. But I don't really have time tonight to really do it. So, yeah, so I'll try to revisit this. I'll jot things. Actually, do I have a post-it nearby? Yes. Doesn't seem, okay, I do have a post-it nearby. So I'll just write down what I want to test tomorrow, hopefully, or the next time I'm on the PTS. So I want to do Sorc with Netch, Acuity. I want to do Magplar, and then on the DK I want to try out Acuity and Elfbane. And then I will do a video looking at Infused compared to Arcane and what's the other one? Robust for stamina, because there has been a little bit of back and forth, and I think there was an article published by somebody who plays on EU. I don't remember the name off the top of my head, but they're very good DPS that basically said that I think it was Infused is better for Stam and Arcane is better for Magicka, because Stam have better sources of weapon, like increasing weapon damage compared to Magicka, which have more sources of max Magicka boosts. But I think LZH noticed that they weren't including the CP bonus, the 20% CP bonus on your resources. So I'll have to go back and redo the math myself. Plus I also want to double check their math as well to make sure that it is accurate. So we'll try to do a video on that. Maybe I probably won't get to it until this weekend. But that's kind of the plan there. And then I do remember I am going to make like a video on the CP distributions for the different vet trials, and then kind of do a boss by boss video series on Maw and Hoff for the people who are progressing through those two trials. It's been a while since I've done AS, since I've tanked AS hard mode, but I do remember what I was running as a tank for AS hard mode, so I might do a video on that too, just to show you guys what I did when we were progressing AS hard mode with Mayflower. So that way you guys can get a better idea of how you want to go about progressing on these more difficult DLC trials. And then of course I will still be streaming Cloud Rest. We're doing it Thursday with Mayflower, doing it Saturday night with Hellfire, and then next week, Monday, Thursday is going to be Cloud Rest with Mayflower, and I'll probably try to squeeze in another Cloud Rest run with Hellfire next week as well. So that's pretty much the schedule for the next couple of weeks, next couple of days. So be on the lookout for those videos. Hopefully exams won't bog me down too much. I do have a final in both classes, and one of my classes is really fucking annoying because the professor, I'm not gonna get into it, but it's really annoying. So that's it for this stream, guys. Thanks for sticking around. I know it's late for you East Coasters and probably you guys over in the EU, and if you guys are watching, I know it's early morning for you guys over, I think, in the Southeast Asia and Eurasia, and the down there Pacific Islanders. Thanks for watching, guys. I will be streaming. We'll be doing VAS tomorrow with Hellfire, so I'll be streaming that, and then Cloud Rest on Thursday. So those are going to be the next 2 streams. Have a great night, guys, and I will see you guys in the next dungeon. Oh, before I sign off here, if you guys can give me feedback on how this mic sounds. I did get a new mic because this particular headset, the mic and the speakers run through the same line, so there was some echoing going on, and I noticed that on a couple of streams, and I know you guys told me about that, so I got a new mic. So let me know down in the comments how this sounds when this stream is uploaded onto YouTube. Thanks, guys. Good night.